You know what you should do? You should follow me on Twitter at Bromo018. Link in the description. Do it now.
What is going on, guys? Bromo18 here, and welcome back once again to another wishlist video. We're really starting to plow along with these videos now, and we continue today with a second part of my PES Master League wishlist for PES 2020. If you're yet to see the first part, then I would highly recommend that you go back and check out that one first before you make your way onto this one, as I won't be recapping in depth with what we suggested within that video. However, if you're already up to date, then let's press ahead with it. As always, make sure to leave any suggestions that you have in the comment section down below, and I'll get back to you. So we'll begin this video by discussing the finance section of Master League. This is certainly an area that could do with some real refinement and reworking, because at the moment it seems to be in a very basic state, which in turn has an effect on your transfer window and the way in which you go about it. Now, at the moment, you're essentially stuck in moments where you have a transfer budget and a wage budget, and what I mean by that is, let's say you have a transfer budget of 20 million and a remaining wage budget of 150,000. You can't divert some of that wage budget towards your transfer budget and vice versa. This means that even though your transfer budget might be high, your wage budget may be very low in some situations, and as a result, it prevents you from being able to bring a certain player into the club, despite the fact that you do have the money available to you. I would like to see budget sliders introduced, so that you can alter your wage and transfer budgets in the way that suits you. Perhaps you want to bring a few free agents in, and therefore you want to transfer all of your available money to your wage budget. Then you should have the ability to do just that. Now, there is a feature already in the game which allows you to decide where your income goes towards, e.g. whether you want the money that you get from gate receipts to go into your transfer budget or your wage budget. But that doesn't help you for when you already have the money in the club account and you're unable to change it. The other major finances change that I'd like to see is more methods of being able to bring more funds into the club transfer budget. For example, a feature where you can go to the board and request more funds for the transfer budget would be very helpful, because at the moment I feel like the game doesn't offer enough on that front. Any budgets that you work with seem to be overly reliant on you selling players or getting a lot of money, prize money, from competitions that you participate in. For me, there needs to be a greater emphasis on how the board will inject their own money into the club. It's just a part of football and businesses in general, and for me that needs to be represented in PES as well. Otherwise, it feels like you have to sell players in order to buy, which isn't always the case. Of course, there are plenty of football clubs that don't have that luxury of the board injecting money into the club, but there are some that do have that option, and with that in mind, this feature needs to be on an individual basis, where the board may come back and say, sorry, we don't have the finances available to give you the funds you're looking for. So that just about rounds it off for the finances section. It's now time for us to move on to the Youth Academy, which is certainly high up on the list of focus for the fans. And perhaps it should be for Konami as well. I want to begin this section by talking about the biggest of the suggestions for improvements, at least in my opinion. Now, what happens in Pro Evo is once a player retires, they will come back as a 16-year-old regen youth player. The regen's ratings will be lower, but the potential will be up there with that of the player's highest ratings during the save. Youth players will generally be regens of former players that have retired. Now, in my opinion, I think this needs to change. Youth players need to be new gens, randomly generated young players that are all generally unique in looks and names. It makes no sense to have regens in the game. Now, I actually spoke to a friend recently about this, who said that he had actually taken to the system in place now and enjoyed taking 16-year-old versions of current players and going through the ranks with them again. I can see why people enjoy this system for sure, But if Master League is truly to become the #1 football simulation experience amongst football video games, then this really needs to change. The #1 selling point that Konami and also PES fans like to sell about the game as to why it's better than FIFA is because they say it's the most realistic experience. It's the truest form of football in video game style. Well, for it to be realistic, you can't have Lionel Messi coming back as a 16-year-old version of himself. It just doesn't work, I'm afraid. There need to be unique new gens. In an ideal world, there would probably be an option when starting your save on Master League to either switch it on or off. Then you'd be able to choose whether or not you want regens or new gens. In addition to that, I want to discuss the youth team itself. Although it's certainly the foundation, the youth team element is very basic and has been in need of some added value and development for some time now. Something that would be good to see in the future for Master League youth teams would be some sort of match structure for the squad. The youth team would play games in a league or cup competition on a regular basis, and then you would get reports from the youth staff on the team as a whole and each individual player. This would give you a real clear picture of how all of them are progressing and whether or not they have the capability and mentality to fit into your first team squad. Should you choose to give them an opportunity, not only would this be a more realistic representation of how the youth setup actually works, in real life terms anyway, but it would also add more excitement and depth for the player as they can really put some effort and focus into that section of their club should they choose to do so. It would also become less of a lottery when promoting a young player to the senior squad because you have a much greater knowledge about them other than their stats. Although this relates to the youth system now, this is more of an overall suggestion for an improvement, and that is to remove the expected progress feature. Now, unlike FIFA, Pro Evo doesn't seem to have a specific potential number for every player in terms of what overall rating they can increase to. However, instead there is a progress tab on the profile of every player which details the actual progress and expected progress in overall rating terms. For me, I don't think there should be something numerical like this. It should always be based on the form, performances and the training levels of the individual. With youth players, I don't see the point of setting limitations immediately to suggest that they will grow to around that number. For me, you can already see that they have decent stats and that they're playing well in the youth academy, based on my last suggestion. So then you know that they have potential and you will act upon it. Then, rather than a limit, it makes more sense for them to progress based on their own performance and mentality. Fixed potentials is something that I believe we need to get away from in the football simulation games because they can change in an instant with a run of good form or an injury. So that rounds off today's youth system wish list. I'm interested to know what you guys think in particular about that last suggestion regarding removing the fixed potential ratings and expected progress feature. Do you agree with me, or do you perhaps think there's a good reason not to? Make sure to let me know. Next, I want to move on to presentation. Now, this doesn't just affect Master League, but it certainly has the biggest impact on the game mode and all of the fans that play it. Now, something that Konami have been heavily criticised for, and particularly this year since they added a whole host of leagues to the game, was that they didn't bother to do any work on the presentation. Whether that be the menus, the design during a game, or the league tables, etc. It will always be the same template. Even when you play in the European competitions, which of course are no longer licensed, the templates remain completely unchanged other than the background on the main menu will change to either orange or blue. For those of you that watched my Rangers Master League series for PES 2019, you'll know that this issue did come up. It became so dull because despite Konami acquiring the license to the Scottish Premiership, they didn't even bother to alter the design to match that of the Ladbrokes Premiership graphics pack. So it was the standard Pro Evolution template used for the rest of the games. This is really frustrating for us because it feels like a half-assed job, which I guess it is. There isn't a lot of reasoning behind purchasing these licenses for leagues if you aren't going to utilise them properly. Make the game more exciting and realistic. Give us the feeling that we really are in different surroundings when we change leagues and countries. Don't just leave it as the same old dull template. This is something that EA have done extremely well and are continually looking to improve upon. In the English Premier League, for example, you have the complete design when you play a Premier League game, and even the anthem plays when you first enter and the players are shaking hands. It might seem minor to some people, but to others, myself included, this is absolutely vital. I honestly find it exciting when I enter a Premier League match on FIFA and the anthem begins to play, along with the legitimate graphics design. But of course, on PES, there is no such thing available, regardless of the league. Here's hoping that they finally address this issue. I guess that rounds it off for part 2, everyone. Be sure to tune in to part 3 of our Master League wishlist for PES 2020. If you made it through this far, then thank you so much for watching. Be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel for more regular gaming content. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter using the handle @Bromo018. The link will be in the description. On that note, I'm Bromo18, and I'll see you soon.